Thank you to the Royal Irish Academy and to Catriona for inviting me here today on behalf of the local authority Archivist and on behalf of Donegal County Council, my own organisation. I'm delighted to be here, and we've already heard some really interesting information about the statistical aspect of working within local authority archives. So I'm mainly going to talk about local authority archive services, how they evolved. I'm going to talk about health records within local authorities and how we as a group attempt as much as we can to provide access in the fairest way possible. I just want to say a bit about my own background. I've worked in local authorities, including in Dublin and now Donegal, since the 1980s. I have a PhD in history, and my subject was compensating Southern Irish loyalists from 1922 to 1932, and that included looking at trauma-based archives, and I can only realise that now when I look back. How they were and how lucky I was to get access, because I think a lot of those records were since closed after I finished that doctorate in the mid-90s. But those records are some of the kind of records that have relevance to the discussions today. So I'm speaking mainly from the point of view as an archivist today, but just want to say that I also, as a researcher, understand a lot of the issues that academics and others have in relation to records. So I just have a few extra notes on this. So this, I just want to show you, if I just move this slightly, I just want to show you, this is my archives, not my personal archives, this is the county archives of Donegal, a snapshot of the office and a little bit of the research room. And there you will see one straight away thing that you'll notice if you're an archivist: why on earth are the archives shared with the office? Well, the reason for that is that we are upstairs in a wee room in an office block where we've been for the last 24 years. It's a royal we, by the way. And there's a research room, and that's basically the workshop space there. There's some archives there. There are also archives in the repository next door, and we also have archives that are leased separately in Letterkenny. So this is in Lifford, which is the county town, and this is where we provide access. And there is no lift to this place, so this is one of the unfortunate things, but we make the very best of it, and we do provide access to everybody who needs it, whether it's downstairs or upstairs. I had a group there the other day, and there was two people who could not get upstairs, so we were able to find an office for them downstairs, a wee meeting room. But it's not ideal, as you can imagine, particularly after 25 years, looking for a proper state-of-the-art building. And I think the only one maybe that is in the country in terms of local authority archives is probably Cork City and County Archive. So anyway, the Local Authority Archivists and Records Managers Group, I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So, yeah, our archives, Donegal County Archives is also the records management service, basically. And this is the case in most local authority archives. And the amount of work you do on records management completely varies from local authority to local authority. It depends on if you have any staff, if there's interest from the organisation you're working with, or if you have time. There's a lot of different reasons. So in Donegal County Council, we work within the culture division. Now, some do, but we work uniquely, I think, in all these services that you see up there, work together. And when I say we work together, they bolster me in my daily work and in my annual work, because without those services to work with, you would be very alone. You would be working on your own, and yet that would be very depressing. But thankfully, that isn't the case with us. We are a team, and a lot of what we've done over the years has been as a team. So when I came first in August 99, and into the first couple of years, the work you had to do was you had to go out and about to all the area offices. You had to find all the records that were out there that belonged to Donegal County Council and its predecessor bodies. We did that. We brought as many of them as we could in. We found locations for them. We surveyed them. We listed them. We boxed them. And eventually, within a few months, we made them accessible in that building you've just seen. So then over the years, we microfilmed some of the ones that were most significant, that we thought, most significant in terms of use. So the Board of Guardians, which I'll talk about in a while, we digitised those. Well, we microfilmed them. Eventually, we made those particular records that were microfilmed available online at Find My Past, and also online at Find My Past in libraries. But all the other archives that we've digitised are available on our website. and they include a lot of local authority records. I'm not going to go into them in detail now. You can go onto our website, donegalco.ie, and you'll find them. Thankfully, that website is being updated, so it is antiquarian, but the archives are available for free on it, so that is a good thing. So some of the stuff we do, as I said, stuff we do over the years have varied. We've worked with we've done Peace 4 projects. We'll be doing Peace 4. These are funded projects, including a series of education packs and other programmes. We worked for obviously 10 or 11 years on the Decade of Centenaries, producing many different exhibitions, residencies, publications. Our most recent being a small book of poems by the famous Donegal poet Anne-Marie Curran on the subject of mother and baby homes and workhouses. That was called Ghost Girl. I meant to bring a few copies. Unfortunately, I couldn't fit it into that backpack you see there. But anyone who would like a copy, you're more than welcome. It should be online. Last year, for instance, as a team, we worked on famine commemoration, the National Famine Commemoration in Milford. That was a real Culture Division team effort. And we've worked on everything from, one of the other things is an oral history project, Donegal, Scotland. This is very unique to Donegal, the migration to Scotland, and working with the Heritage Office very closely on that. And with the County Museum, we work on everything from acquisitions to exhibitions to publications, outreach, reminiscences, everything. So that's just to give you a short snapshot of Donegal archives and what we do. So, the local authority archives, archivists and records managers. It's already been mentioned by Niamh, and thanks to Niamh for that. Well, with local authority archive services, with professional archivists, were really only employed in Cork and Dublin City, as far as I know, prior to 1994. So the Local Government Act of 1994, thanks to the National Archivist staff, I think, made it the responsibility of local authorities to preserve and make accessible their archives and to manage their non-current records. There's a paragraph, and it's available online if you want to see it. It was added to the large 2001 Local Government Act, but it's exactly the same, so it wasn't improved on, and it hasn't been improved on since 2001. Basically, preserve your archives and manage your records. So local authorities since the early 2000s have... Sorry, I need to go back. Local authorities since the early 2000s have set up archive services and employed archivists. Some have only done that temporarily, though. So local authority archivists and records managers, together we formed a group in around the year 2000 when there was about 7 or 8 of us, Waterford, Wexford, Limerick, myself, a few others. But now, and there's currently 22 local authority archivists, and we're employed in 17 local authorities. So as you see, that means that there are several counties without any archivist. I mean, some of these, every county is significant, but I look at Mayo, who used to have a wonderful archivist, and has not had a professional archivist for years. One of the biggest counties in the country. Then you look at the others, some of them that surround myself, Cavan and Monaghan, haven't had one. I had one for a year, a couple of times before the financial bust. South Dublin never had an archivist. Kilkenny never had an archivist. Laois, not really. Westmeath. So Tipperary, Clare and Kerry had local authority archivists. They have moved on, so hopefully that they will be replaced soon. So these are, on a more positive note, these are the local authority archives currently with a professional archivist. So I'm not going to read them out. So our remit. So what is our remit? Well, our archive service in Donegal works within Culture Division, as I've said, and with all of these other sections. And we have the county manager as the chief executive, the directors across the sections, and then the divisions, and we're within Culture Division. We try to make sure that we are considered to be core, but it's very hard to be considered to be core in an organisation as wide and varied as a local authority. So this is our mission, and you'll see it there. We seek to preserve, acquire, make accessible the documented heritage of the county for the people of Donegal. The people of Donegal includes everybody who lives in Donegal, by the way, present and future generations. And I just drew up one to show you a similar one from Wexford. Identifying, acquiring, preserving and making available original materials that document the history and development of the county. So as a group, we meet together regularly. During COVID, I was chair for 3 years. We met mainly online. We update from 2002. We have implemented and updated the National Records Retention Policy that Niamh referred to. It's very important because it sets out the recommendations which we strongly feel should be maintained by local authorities in terms of disposal and, more important, archiving of local authority records. The original 2002 document is online if anyone wants to see it. It's a really good template for any organisation wishing to develop a retention policy, but we've been updating it for the last few years and on spreadsheets. Any of that can be made available to anyone who wants to see them. We collaborate with other bodies on a variety of projects. So recently we collaborated with the Department of Local Government and Housing and Heritage on a joint exhibition called Celebrating. Doesn't have the most exciting name, doesn't have a catchy name, but it is very interesting actually. So celebrating 125 years of local government. It's going to be a publication with that soon. And in 2020, over COVID, we produced a publication on the celebrating 100 years of the 1920 seminal local elections. And we've had a very, very good collaboration with Virtual Treasury and Trinity College, including the joint production of the book on the grand jury. And we've worked with Heritage Council on many things, including funding, obviously. And we've worked recently with the National Archives on the Anglo-Irish Treaty exhibition. We've been collaborating with various public bodies for many years, including the HSE and TUSLA, with regard to identifying and providing access to records relating to county homes and mother and baby homes. This is just, that was part of just one of the panels from the local government exhibition, and that's just the front cover of People, Place and Power, which the Trinity College did with our help, basically. It's just the treaty when Leo Varadkar came to Letterkenny to the County Museum, and for the treaty, the travelling version from the National Archives, and that's our booklet there, and that's online as well. So Archives of Public Health. Well, Archives of the Poor Law Unions, obviously Board of Guardians, I'll talk about them in a minute. Minutes of meetings of the Board of Health, you'll hear a lot about them in a few minutes. Some psychiatric and district hospital records, some county and city council surviving health records. We have a lot of records, both private and public, but I'm not going to go into what we have. You can go to any of our websites, you'll see that we have our public records, we have those that are donated to us or deposited with us, and it can be anything from the military records to landed estate, to photographs, to school records, but today I'm going to mainly talk about the health records. So the poor law system, most of you here today will know it, so I'm not going to go into detail. You can see here it was under the 1838 Poor Relief Act, which established over 130 workhouses across the country. They were run by the Board of Guardians, working in poor law unions, which were administrative areas. And their functions were gradually extended over time to include outdoor relief, fever hospitals, dispensaries and public health issues. But the system from the 1900s was really marked for abolition. This is the Donegal County Museum in Letterkenny. This is part of what was their workhouse, and it's now been extended for the museum, but it's well worth a visit if you're in Letterkenny. So, poor law system. Many workhouses are closed or amalgamated before independence in 1922, and then the 1925 Local Government Act, first major act of the new government, Free State government, finally abolished completely the poor law system and created boards of health and public assistance. Usually under this, one workhouse in each county became the county home. People still living in workhouses across a county were transferred to the new county home, and in Donegal this was Stranora Workhouse, which became the county home in 1924 to 25. Many, if not all, local authorities across Ireland hold Board of Guardian workhouse records, and I know the National Archives holds a few for Dublin as well. These records include minutes of meetings of the Guardians and some admission and discharge and relief registers. Occasionally other records have survived, for instance debt registers, correspondence, financial records or dietary registers. This is some of our workhouse minute books in the Archives office. So the Donegal Poor Law Unions, as you know, there were poor law unions across the county, so County Donegal was divided into 8, and these were where the workhouses were. I'm not going to list them out, you can have a look at them there yourself. Surviving poor law union records in County Donegal include the majority of the minute books. Most of them have survived, thanks to people in the past like librarians, like good administrative people, like members of the public, because they were moved from pillar to post, but we're very lucky. We're also very lucky in Donegal to have a very good set of admission and discharge indoor and outdoor relief registers, though there are some that don't have any. And some are destroyed in a fire, some are destroyed, in place many years ago. But we overall, we're quite lucky. And also to note that unions often cross counties boundaries. So Strabane Public in Tyrone includes East Donegal, which includes Lifford itself, and St Johnston, Convoy, places across East Donegal. Ballyshannon down the south, their union included parts of Fermanagh, so you have to go to Prony to find some of those. You have to go to our authority to find those. But if you want to find some of the records from up as far as Fawn and Inishowen, you might have to go to Prony, where the Derry records are held. So it's all a bit confusing. This is just an extract from our Letterkenny 1861 admission register, just to give you an idea. Under the Local Government Act 1925, rural district councils were abolished and some of their responsibilities transferred to county councils, which their functions were then transferred to the county boards of health. So as I already said, they were established and they existed from 1924 to 1942. So I'm going to talk about the responsibilities, and these broadly included some of these you see there: sanitation, county homes, hospitals, home assistance, fire service, housing, school medical service. I'm going to talk about them in more detail in a minute. So when the boards were abolished in 1942, their functions were subsumed into the county councils. This is one of our Board of Health minute book there on your left, with some correspondence that were found inside the minute book, and that's just a page from inside it, about the county home, and a report about the matron or something. So the minutes refer to many public issues, and these are just some of them. As you can see, you have personnel, salaries, staffing, finance, budgets, environmental issues, home assistance, fire service, school services, district and fever hospitals, dispensaries, district nursing, the mental hospital, infectious diseases, TB, such as TB, derelict sites, slaughterhouses, milk and dairies, burial boards and graveyards, the running of the county home, including the boarding out and fostering of children. And these are bound minute books. And their remit were vast. They had subcommittees that dealt with a lot of this, and all the subcommittee reports went into one bound volume. So the Board of the Minutes. So regarding the administration of the boarding out and fostering of children in particular, so individual children are referred to in the minutes and in their kind of reports that went into the minutes. So the issues reported include situations in foster homes, the changing foster homes, children changing foster homes, inspections by inspectors of their situations while they were being fostered out or boarded out. Particular issues may be in relation to school or children being hired out at 15 and onwards. So some of them are not nice to hear, and some of them are these are just an example of some of them. So I'll give a few examples. With reference to absence from school during the month of December, the child has not been strong since he had diphtheria and he will be sent to school more regularly. That was from 1934. A or G reports that regarding her application to receive a boarded out child, the home of G would be excellent for a child. At nurse with and well looked after from 1927. Minister inquires how long the family will remain in the home. Board replies that the family were discharged. Well, obviously not always up to date on their information. This is just a pretty poor copy of some of the minutes again, just to give an example of how they look in the volume. A small number of local authorities also hold other records. So small numbers hold admission and discharge registers for county homes or hospitals, letter books of the County Board of Health, some administrative files, though I don't think there are many of these, and some births and death registers. This was just from a survey we did to see what we hold generally together. But by and large, it's the minutes of the Board of Health. Some of these would be more unusual, but some might hold some of these records, some local authorities. And then these are just some others. So I know, for instance, in Donegal, there are diet registers for some district hospitals, medical officers' annual reports, which are statistical. We hold some of those, but again, they're not all there. Some day books, financial records of some institutions, accounts, abstracts of accounts. And then there are some interment records and minutes of burial boards as well. And obviously the records of the psychiatric or mental hospital, which in Donegal's case is St. Connell's and Letterkenny. And some medical registers. So in the 1940 County Management Act changed local authorities, and that established county managers, who are now called chief executives. They create orders which are basically the decisions made at executive level as opposed to councillor level. So these are the executive level decisions on all issues under the council's remit. In the meantime, the Public Assistance Act of 1939 became part of the Public Health. Then became part of the local authority's remit as the boards of health were gone. And between 1942 and 71, health functions were discharged by the health and public assistance sections of the county councils. And then, as we know, in 1970, health boards were created, and in 2005, the HSE. So managers' orders relate to every service provided by a local authority since the 1940s, and we've already mentioned some of them, and there they all are again, as you see, the same ones with an addition of roads and transportation, lighting, elections, planning and development. They've become more modern, obviously, at this stage, but still they have responsibility for county home and hospitals. So the bulk of the information recorded in these orders does not relate to the survivors or administration of any of the institutions in question, because there are vast bound volumes, some which are indexed and some which unfortunately aren't indexed. These are just an example of our bound volumes of managers' orders. Most managers' orders are held by the corporate section because, of course, they're the vital records of the council. Minutes of meetings and corporate and managers' orders are all regarded as the vital records of the county, and are often held, in our case, are held in a strong room. We can have access to them for people, but that's where they're held. So from the 1940s, from 42 to 70s, managers' orders may refer to the boarding out of children from the county home. In Donegal they do, but not in all local authorities. I was talking to some of my colleagues about this, and they did say specifically that in some local authorities, their children are not identified or referred to in orders, but in many of them they are. I know when it comes to Donegal, when it comes to the late 60s and 70s, you go to the manager's orders and you'll see that they do not refer to children by name, but by initial, making it very difficult. Again, even more difficult. And often they're not indexed properly, so searches are very difficult. References to children in some orders include some of the things we've already heard, being transferred from one foster parent to another, issues within the foster home, money being needed for clothes or school or courses being undertaken, issues in foster care, etc. So we have here examples. His foster mother wishes to adopt him. Somebody is anxious to remain with her. These arrangements might be sanctioned. The homes are satisfactory and the assistant officer appears to visit them regularly. Wretched home, poor and badly kept. Some of it is very dirty and appears to have nothing towards his maintenance. So these are just some of the comments. What we did a few years ago is we abstracted all the information from both the minutes, health board minutes, and the manager's orders relating to county home and boarding out, and we put them on databases. And then when TUSLA took over that function, we transferred those databases to them. We never had the original records of the admission records that were always held with the HSE and TUSLA. And we still have our original Board of Health and minutes and county manager's orders. Well, we have to, because they refer to so many other functions. So other health related, it also refers to the payment of staff, the employment of health personnel, prevention of infectious diseases, vaccination against TB, and other various health issues that the County Council took over. This is just a photo of what was called the asylum, St. Connell's. You can see how vast a range of buildings it is. It's even bigger than that now, and it's used for day services. St. Connell's. So for over 2 decades, archivists employed in local authorities have been assisting organisations and individuals who are trying to trace family members or trying to fill the huge gaps in their own personal histories. And we've always regarded this as our priority. Those of us who are involved in this, we feel it. We know the demand that's out there, not the demand, but the need and the desire to have this information, and it's always been a priority for us individually in our own services. And I spoke to some archivists about this in the last few days. They wanted me to emphasise that as well. But the majority of admission and discharge registers for county homes are now with the HSE, with TUSLA. Some are with the Irish Adoption Authority. For example, the admission registers for Stranora County Home, now St. Joseph's Hospital, they are held by TUSLA. So access to such records is via the holder of the records. So we have an access policy, the Local Authority Archivists Group, we have an access policy which we developed over the last few years. We wanted to make it fair to everybody. So key points from that policy are this is just bullet points really. The right to access to archives is to be balanced with the need to protect the rights of individuals and the confidentiality of organisations, but particularly the rights of individuals whose activities are reflected in the archives, and with preserving the archives themselves. The 30-year rule, which we all know about, generally applies with general access to archives in accordance with Section 80 of the Local Government Act 2001. Archivists facilitate access in line with relevant laws and regulations and according to best archival practice. Archives containing personal data are subject to data protection and to closures of 100 years. Closed archives in local authorities include health, hospital, certain housing and school registers, human resource files, and records that are under 100 years old. However, records marked as closed does not mean they are totally inaccessible. Archivists in local authorities have assisted organisations and individuals in tracing their family or local history, or academic history as well, including with the use of records marked as closed. So I've had, for instance, a researcher working on St Colum's Hospital in recent years. I frequently have people wanting to look at the school records, and we find ways of making them available in a way that doesn't breach data protection. It is necessary for all of us to balance the right of access with the right to privacy, and people do have a right to privacy as well. In the case of viewing closed archives, access is permitted via an application form and production of proof of identity. And you can see our access policy on most of our websites and our forms. Those who can apply for access are a person referred to in the archives, a person acting on behalf of someone mentioned in the archives who is incapacitated, the nominated next of kin of a person mentioned in the archives, a professional working on behalf of a client, for instance, a solicitor or social worker, and a researcher engaged in bona fide research. Readers of private records undertake not to identify publicly individuals mentioned in these records, but to anonymise the information they glean from the archives. The method of anonymisation should be discussed with the archivist. The archive service may, in some cases, provide redacted copies of closed archives to a researcher, rather than providing direct access to the originals. This has never happened to me now, the redaction, but it depends on the records you hold. It may provide redacted copies to a user who has seen the originals. These are just the bound volumes from the Board of Health. You can see how massive they are for each year. And then as years go on, there's 2 or 3 of these for each year, because basically it's all of their services in one volume. Sadly, not all relevant records have survived. So over the years, as we know, with every archive series, I'm sure any of you archivists here will understand that there are always gaps. There's never a complete collection. Even with the minute books of the Board of Guardian, there are some unions that for some reason have more gaps than others. They're probably just taken home by people and never returned, back in the day when that could be done. But there are gaps also as institutions and organisations change and buildings were destroyed, or staff moved buildings. So yeah, we went from the Board of Guardians to the Board of Health to the County Council or City Council to the Health Board to the HSE. Who knows? It's difficult. A lot of it wasn't done with malice or anything when records might have gone missing or lost, or whether they were destroyed, or there wasn't the same value placed in archives, I suppose, 60, 70 years ago, or 50 years ago even. It should be noted that the vast majority of the archivists who work in local authorities in Ireland work alone, and we've already mentioned this, but no administrative or clerical or professional support on a daily basis. So sometimes there will be delays in trying to help. But the situation with regard to archives in local authorities with no archive service or professional archivist is much worse, I would imagine. And this varies from one local authority to the next. So some library services provide access to records such as workhouses or grand jury, but I don't know if they know anything about access policies or anything like that. So in many local authorities, corporate services hold all the council vital records. Those include all minutes of council meetings, predecessor bodies such as Board of Health, and also managers' orders. How these are accessed is the responsibility of the director of the service holding the records. So just really, that's really, I suppose, a summary of the situation. And I suppose what my colleagues in Lejarm wanted really to emphasise was that we really try very hard to have for many years, certainly as long as I've been in the archives world, if you like, trying very hard to make accessible to people their records, their own records, and trying to make access generally to archives that were closed for so many decades or were just not available. But what I suppose at the end of the day, we need to realise that while we make great efforts to help people, the majority of records that we hold are subsidiary. They're supporting documents, and they're generally less relevant when individuals survive or search for details on their personal history. But they might be relevant to find out more about the actual history of the institution, if you like. But sometimes there may be a few that might have directly very relevant records, but by and large, a lot of what we hold are subsidiary in this particular matter. The majority of records are held, as far as we know now, with TUSLA, and in some cases, as far as I know, with the Adoption Authority of Ireland. And obviously, they're there as you can both carry out tracing and also try and birth information using the portals that are up there by the Adoption Authority of Ireland and by TUSLA. But if you want for information on the records of a specific local authority, and if you're trying to find records on from a local authority that doesn't have an archive service, then you may just need to go to the top. You may need to start with the chief executive and work your way down, because otherwise you may not get anywhere, because it won't be a priority for them. So that's really all I wanted to say today, and thanks very much for listening to me. Thank you.